Welcome to my Beautiful Psychosis book launch. My name's Emma Good. I'm the author for anybody who doesn't know me. This book has been 7.5 years in the making, culminating in today. And I've just had a complete nightmare, so I'm just a bit stressed out. My internet went down about half an hour ago, so I had to quickly hop in an Uber and go to my friend's house. So it's all a bit chaotic, so bear with me if we have any technical problems. This is the first time I've done anything like this. And I can't actually see you. I am just looking into a green dot on my laptop. So please make yourself known in the comments. Just say that you're there, say hi, I can see your comments. And yeah, whatever you like in the comments. If I can't respond right now, I will read them all after. And if I disappear for any reason, just hang around. I'll probably reappear within a few minutes, hopefully. So today I join an illustrious book club of people who weren't published until they were over 50, which includes Laura Ingalls Wilder, who wrote The Little House on the Prairie. So I'm very happy about that. And I just want to say a little bit about myself for people who don't know me, who don't know anything about me. I am a filmmaker. I've been making films for 25 years. I'm emerging from behind the camera to tell my story because I've been telling other people's stories all that time. I started out in television at the BBC Natural History Unit in Bristol. And that was where I had my first psychotic episode. Then I moved to Devon, where I set up my award-winning production company, Green Lane Films. And then after about 10 years, I sold everything and went off to traveling to Latin America. And now I'm living in Buenos Aires. So I am live from Buenos Aires. I came here because I absolutely love dancing tango. So I came here to improve my tango and to have a good adventure. And I've just finished writing my second book, Tango, Camino, Romeo, which includes this adventure that I'm on at the moment. That's included in the book. And my friend Gila, I don't know if Gila's out there. Are you out there, Gila? Make yourself known if you are. Gila predicted that Tango, Camino, Romeo would be made into a film. And because of that film, that would be how most people hear about my Beautiful Psychosis. So it won't have like immediate roaring success, but according to Gila, it will after Tango, Camino, Romeo is made into a film. So for people who don't know me, you can sign up to my website, emmagood.com. And there, if you sign up, you'll get 3 chapters to my Beautiful Psychosis. But you'll also be able to follow me on my next journey with this new book. And hopefully it won't take 7.5 years because I've already written it in about 1/5 of the time. So I haven't always wanted to be a writer. Like as a kid, I didn't think I'm going to be a writer. In fact, I was more of a librarian. I had all these books, I loved books, and I turned them into a library. They were in alphabetical order, and I had a little pocket inside the sleeve with a little ticket that I had to take out. I had to take my own books out of my library and pretend to stamp them because I absolutely loved books. And I didn't write much as a kid. I was inspired to write a poem about my pony because I'd managed to persuade my parents to buy me a pony for 2 birthdays and 2 Christmases after I'd had one on loan for a year to prove that I could do it. And so I was so inspired, I wrote a poem that was published in Pony magazine. And this is how it went. Shall we play a little game and try to guess my pony's name? It begins with T and ends in E, and in the middle there is a C. Shall I give you another clue? You can drink him, eat him too. I suppose you want to know. Well, all right, I'll tell you so. Tea Cake is my pony's name. Now, wasn't that a silly game? And then I was praised a lot at school for my writing abilities. Like in English class, my story would get read out to the class, or at university when I was doing an English degree. Again, like the beginning of an essay would be read out. So looking back, I did have writing talent, although I never had ambitions to write. It wasn't until I had my first psychotic episode that I really felt I needed to write, actually. And when I came out of the hospital, I started to write my Beautiful Psychosis then. The first line was, I used to have romantic notions of madness. And the tone was very kind of poor me. I mean, I wanted to tell you what a terrible time I'd had, you know, been through hell, and I wanted to share that experience because it's so taboo to talk about it, but I really needed to get it off my chest. Anyway, that book, I never really finished it, and I put it on the shelf, and I kept taking it off the shelf every now and again and having another go at it. And gradually, the more I did that, the more I thought, actually, I did want it to be a book and to be out in the world. But I couldn't really find the narrative voice. And then I married a writer. I got to experience firsthand the writing process and the publishing process, really, and how doable it was. But it wasn't until I went to a psychic, after my marriage ended, I went to see a psychic to get reassurance that I'd done the right thing. And this is what she said. I'm just going to get that ready for you and have a listen. She made a bit of a prediction.
You're really talented. The written word's important around you as well. So writing is important for you in the future. I know I was joking about it, but it's quite important there. And the success for you is writing.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
Yeah, there will be. Don't give up on it. You know, you tend to put projects aside.
Yeah.
And there's something you put aside for some time, and you keep thinking about it.
Yeah.
You need to bring it back into the forefront and think, I'm going to tighten this up and make this one work. Yeah? Because you'll know the right people. You'll know somebody who knows somebody that's going to help you. All right? It's not that person direct, but it's someone they know.
Hearing that, it really gave me encouragement to carry on with what I was doing. She was right. I kept taking this book off the shelf and trying it again. That reading was in 2011. And then 2 years later, I finally committed to putting aside time every day to write this book properly and get it published. And I basically promised myself just 5 minutes every day I would write. I'd heard that that was a really successful approach because it's so easy to achieve 5 minutes in a day. And I don't know, for the first few weeks, I struggled to write for 5 minutes. So completing those 5 minutes made me feel really good. Eventually that became 2 hours a day, and, you know, I found the voice. And the reason why I was struggling with the narrative voice is that I was writing in the past tense. And when I wrote in the past tense, I was this kind of experty person looking back. But one day I decided to write the best description I could of insomnia and write in the present tense. And that's when I found my way into the book. And the prediction that she made, that I would know somebody who knows somebody, came true, because at the end of writing, I tried to find a publisher. I tried to find an agent for months and months and months, 6 months in fact, and I felt despair. And nobody was interested in taking it on, so I wasn't sure if I believed in the book anymore. So I went off traveling, and in that time I sat with it and I read it again out loud to somebody else, and I realized, no, this needs publishing. I'm going to publish it. I'm going to self-publish it, if not. I came back to the UK and tried to find a publisher this time, but no publisher would take it either. So I then thought, right, well, I'm going to self-publish, and I got in touch with Dr. Russell Razzaque, who appears at the end of the book. He is a consultant psychiatrist in the NHS. He is a published author who wrote Breaking Down is Waking Up, and he's also introducing this amazing new system of mental health care into the NHS called Open Dialogue. So I wanted him to write me a foreword. So I got in touch with him. Loads of people get in touch with him and send him their story. And he said, yeah, I'll have a read. And after he read it, he said he couldn't put it down. He said I was very talented, but I definitely had to find a publisher, and he wanted to help me. So he said I should send it to Tim Reed, he's a consultant psychiatrist. He's a psychiatrist as well, who I think Russell trained with. I'm not entirely sure if I'm remembering that correctly. And he also ran a publishing company. And so Russell made the introduction. He loved it, but he encouraged me to hold out for a bigger publisher because I had such big ambitions for the book. He said, look, try and find a bigger publisher, and if not, come back to me. And so then, you know, I sent it out to lots of publishers. I didn't get anyone to bite. And so again, I was going to self-publish, and then I thought, I remembered, oh, I remember that guy. So I got in touch, but his company had been bought out. So he said, I don't know, I've got some clout. I'll take it to the next meeting and let you know. Anyway, Oliver Rathbone from Aeon Books agreed to take it on, and they've never published a memoir before, so it's a new thing for them. And so I think it's time for me to read an excerpt. Now, this bit is taken from the first episode. I've kind of come through the most difficult bit, and I can check out the ward a little bit more now. So that's where we are in the story. Okay. I've been prescribed antipsychotic medication, something called haloperidol. I'm not sectioned, so technically I have the right to refuse treatment, but that is just a technicality. When I do refuse, they find creative ways of making me take it. Open wide, says the cheerful nurse, who wheels his bike down the corridor every morning. I trust him, and I wonder what fun game we're playing. He squirts a disgusting liquid from a plastic syringe. It looks like urine and tastes bitter as hell, and I feel tricked, my trust betrayed. Injecting me in the bottom is less deceptive, but requires more force. I don't like either method. Now I go up to the drug counter and say, "Hello, Peridol," obediently opening my mouth. I swallow hard, then lift my tongue to show that the pill's gone down. It's all a sarcastic show of compliance, but I'd rather take it disgruntled than against my will. It clamps the muscles in my back, pulls my arm into my sides with bent elbows and makes me shuffle. I look like a zombie puppet. I can tell who else is taking it by the way they shuffle too. The haloperidol shuffle. If we weren't mad when we arrived, we certainly look it now. It's the main thing that distinguishes us from the staff. Nobody wears a uniform on this ward. It's meant to make it seem more relaxed, but it just confuses the visitors. Dad and I play a game. Who's the patient and who's a member of staff? Can he tell the difference? It's easy for me. I know intuitively, plus the staff don't usually hang out around the corridors. They're only ever there for a reason, to attend to something. The rest of the time they hide away in the office. He's a member of staff, Dad says, pointing to Dirty Pete. No way, he's a patient. Are you sure? Dad doesn't like being wrong. Absolutely. Just because he's wearing a waistcoat, don't be fooled. He's definitely a patient. His name's Pete. I call him Dirty Pete because he gives me the creeps. It's him that blasts out that marching band music full volume. Dirty Pete has intense dark grey semicircles under his eyes. His skin has a grey hue to it. He came up to me on the first day and did his disturbing impression of me, crawling along the corridor, breathing with horror movie-like exaggerated sound effects of me sliding along the floor. Please don't do that, I said. It's hard enough being in this place without having to deal with you doing that. He instantly transformed into a friendly bloke and insisted on taking me to see his old record player. He always plays the same tune, one that sounds like a circus intro. He likes to put it on full volume, announcing another day at the circus. The ward is like a circus. There's the fabulous furry freak brother who sits on the same chair all day, every day. His long hair is a mess, but hides his face. He doesn't look at anyone or talk to anyone, just sits there smoking roll-ups. Dancing Man glides along with his hands splayed wide like jazz hands, wearing white gloves. Do you have a sister called Sally? He asks me. Yes, I reply, wondering how he knows her. She was in my class at school. Right, I say, wishing I were anonymous. I'm not exactly proud to be on this psych ward. The old feather lady lies on her bed, being pumped full of oxygen, so that when she gets up, she's so light, she looks like she floats out of the room. She only gets up for a cigarette and then gets straight back into bed for more oxygen. There's Football Fan, who likes to wear his Man U t-shirt on his head, and there's Mavis. Mavis tells me she tried to hang herself in the bathroom using the light switch cord. That's a stupid way to try to kill yourself, I reply unsympathetically. She obviously just wants attention, or else why would she bother telling me? If she really wanted to top herself, she'd find a more effective method. The most disturbing, though, is the mad woman in the attic. She arrives one day and sits outside the meeting room and insists on being allowed to see the doctor immediately. The consultants only jet in once every couple of weeks, so she has a long wait on her hands. For the entire day, she sits there, stubbornly refusing to budge. My husband brought me in here, she yells. I'm not mad. I want to see the doctor, now. My husband thinks I'm crazy, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. She's still there the next day. I can't decide whether she's crazy or her husband is a controlling bastard who can't deal with her emotions. It's disturbing to witness. She's fucked either way, isn't she? If there's nothing wrong with her, then her husband has powers he shouldn't have. Or if she's no idea she's doolally, then how's she ever going to get herself better? What we all share, despite our differences, is being on the receiving end of the total failure on the part of the mental health service to help us deal with the distress we are in. On the contrary, our very distress is pathologized, as if there is something inherently wrong with us. We are viewed as a collection of diagnoses, derogatory labels, a them distinct from the us, that must be medicated back to normality. If you don't want to take the medication, you're non-compliant and seen as a nuisance and menace even. There must be something wrong with you if you deny your need for medication. Your denial is very proof of your insanity and delusional state. Something has flipped inside me, but not in the way that they think. There's a horrible moment when I see in their eyes how I'm being perceived, like realizing you're facing a dictator who you have to go along with in order not to be shot. Taking the medication is hard enough, but not taking it is even harder. In fact, it's not possible once you're in the clutches of the psychiatric system. There is no other option. It's all they know and all they've been taught. In any other department in the hospital, it would be explained to you what they're going to give you, why, the effects it's going to have, and any possible side effects. Here on this ward, I've lost that privilege. So, the end of the book, I introduce open dialogue because I was invited to film the training of this amazing new system of care. It comes from Finland because Finland had the worst statistics in the whole of Europe for schizophrenia, and schizophrenia is just someone who has a lot of psychotic episodes. and in Tornio in Western Lapland, the system actually collapsed, and a group of family therapists got together and worked out how they could do it better. And they came up with open dialogue, which is it's dialogue rather than diagnosis. And the idea is that the person at the centre of concern, they're not called a patient, but they're experiencing distress because of a life situation around them where relationships have broken down, communication has broken down, and so the dissociation that happens in psychosis is a result of that. And so if you mend those relationships, bring people back into dialogue, make the space safe again, person comes back to themselves. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce the man who is introducing it into the NHS, who invited me to film 2 years of his training course for online learning purposes. So I've seen the course, I've met the participants of the course, and Russell has managed to get funding to do this massive research to find out if it actually works, because at the moment the only research available is from the team in Finland. So there could be a bias. The statistics are amazing, but there could be a bias. So the research that Russell's been doing is really, really important in order for the NHS to take this seriously and for this pilot project that is happening now to be rolled out across the NHS. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Russell on. Hi, Russell.
Hi there.
Thanks for coming today. How are you?
Good. Yeah, good. Thanks. Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too. You managed to get away from your parenting duties.
Yeah, for tonight. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Good. And how's lockdown there? You're all out, aren't you? You're out and about.
We are, but I mean, there are a lot of rumours about things sort of tightening up again.
Yeah.
Sort of big parts of the country are now going back into various restrictions, and I think that's going to happen again here. What about over there in Argentina?
Yeah, we're still locked down. Yeah, a bit more loosely, but we're locked down. Nearly 7 months now.
Whoa.
But yeah, I'm seeing a lot of posts on Facebook with people seriously in a lot of distress now because of situation. So I'm just wondering if you noticed anything at work. Have you noticed a difference with more people coming in for help?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who the images are sort of delayed here, but who'd never experienced the psychiatric system before, and had major breakdowns. I mean, there's a bit of a spike, but actually at the beginning of the pandemic there was a reduction in referrals coming into services.
Right.
I think a lot of people were trying to do their bit to protect the NHS to stay away. A lot of psychiatric trusts were moving towards treating COVID as well. So it was a dip a lot, and there was folks who actually, there's a lot of folks who'd had sort of impending fears about things, terrible things happening in the world, kind of felt a little bit proven right, by this, and actually, actually resulted in some people's anxiety going down. Yeah, I told you the whole time. We were right. So there was actually a dip in a lot of people being referred, but then towards the end, just the several months of lockdowns, a lot of people started to really break down, and that has now led to another sort of rise in referrals. But now the uncertainty is just ongoing, so who knows?
But really, I brought you on because I'm dying to hear an update about the research. Have you got anything you can share with us about the research? Do you want to say something about that?
I can tell you about the journey so far. I mean, you've given a good background into open dialogue. Obviously, it was invented a couple of decades ago into northern Finland. In northern Finland, where they had some of the best outcomes in the world. I mean, they used to have some of the worst outcomes. After they started open dialogue, they had some of the best outcomes, and it was all based around the idea of these things don't exist in an individual's head. They exist in a community of people who are all experiencing some trouble together, and training clinicians to work, systemically with a whole group of people, and creating a space where they can generate their own understanding and narrative and story, and that's more healing than anything else. So they had phenomenal outcomes there, to the point where their actual incidence of sort of psychosis and things was less than anywhere in the modern world. But it wasn't accepted by most policymakers around the world because it wasn't randomized. So they could say, well, maybe it was the water or the weather that changed that led to this change, but how do we know it was open dialogue? So we had to run a randomized trial in order to get the NHS to listen, and we got £2.5 million worth of funding for a large trial. It's now the biggest mental health model trial in the world, and we've got 6 trusts across the country now running open dialogue pilots. We started to recruit clients into it last year, but because of the pandemic, we had to halt that. But that doesn't mean we stopped the trial. So everybody who we recruited, we continued doing open dialogue with, and in the control treatment as usual group, they also continue to get treatment as usual. And now we've restarted. Almost all the sites are restarted again, except one, and we're hoping to be fully up to scratch. Now, prior to this full kind of randomized trial, I mean, it's fully randomized, so we kind of randomized streets and addresses, and so whether you get it or not, you would never know, and so that way we can be sure that if there's any difference between the 2 cohorts, it's because of open dialogue. We did a pilot. It's actually a couple of years ago now. And while we don't have quantitative data, because we'll only know that once we've crunched all the numbers, once we've recruited everybody. But from the pilot, we have some qualitative feedback in terms of the 2 groups: people who had usual treatment, people who had open dialogue, and it's going to be published soon. But in short, really, the essential difference was that in open dialogue, there was a lot of gratitude for the treatment they were receiving. There was a lot of positive response in terms of feeling connected to, feeling heard, feeling understood, people being very grateful to their clinicians. We have a system in open dialogue where even if you're discharged from the service, that relationship with the clinicians is always open, so you can come back anytime and see the same people and not have to go through GP and all sorts of hoops to get back in. So that was very much appreciated. That relationship was deeper, whereas in treatment as usual, often there was nothing at all. Often there was just medication. It felt very faceless, quite cold, and that was really explicitly described in the focus groups we did. So we've got some qualitative outcomes, which tells us what we know and what we've already experienced. Because I've been doing it for 6 or 7 years now, and so have some other people. We've all seen the same thing happen. Now we need the numbers that will hopefully influence the policymakers, and that's going to take a couple more years. That's kind of where we are at the moment.
4 years. I need to wait a couple more years. Is that?
Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, we've got to finish recruiting the total number, so it's 644 we need to recruit for the trial, and we did about a third before the pandemic hit. And then probably in the middle of next year is when we'll have recruited the full number. Then we need to follow up for another year or 2. I mean, each person needs about 2 years follow-up, and then we'll crunch the data and publish it. So there is a bit of time.
It's available in Devon, is it? Is open dialogue?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Devon's an exciting place now because they had a team that started off. They're an excellent open dialogue team, and I was kind of their tutor for that group, and they're a fabulous bunch of folk. Very enthused by it. They've got consultants and managers who, they say it's transformed their lives, their careers and their lives. They never. So, for example, I'm sure you won't mind me name dropping him, but Tim Beardsmore, who's manager of one of the teams in Torbay, and he gave a talk once. I saw him give a speech about open dialogue in a conference long ago, and he said that I've been a nurse for 18 years, and I've never been more excited than I have in the last year since I've done open dialogue. And he's really, bringing it on board with his team, and now they've been so passionate and so positive, and they're, just the anecdotal responses from their service users have been so positive that their whole trust now is considering a potential wide-scale move, which nobody has done so far. It's not been decided yet. Yeah, and I mean, no decisions are made yet, but there's very senior people in our trust who are talking with us about the possibility of a trust-wide transformation. Whether they do it or not, I don't know yet, but they've got further than anybody else in seriously considering that. So, yeah, impressive group.
What about Stockport or Manchester?
Unfortunately, nothing up north. No, nothing at all. I mean, there have been some service user and carer groups who have been passionate about it, trying to lobby hard, invited me up there a few times. I did a bit of networking, tried to encourage people. In the end, it wasn't possible. The nearest is Cheshire. So there's a trust, up there, who have sent a team to this year's training. Yeah, they've sent a team to this year's training. lovely, lovely group of folk. I just finished training with them yesterday because we had the latest module yesterday, doing it all online now. Yeah, I mean, they're going to really do quite well in that particular team. It's one team among many as a pilot, but yeah, I mean, they're inspiring group. Yeah.
Good. And you talk about, I mean, especially in your book, Breaking Down is Waking Up, how psychosis can be, it can hold every psychosis can hold the potential for transformation. Do you want to explain that a bit? Most people might think, well, how could that be? It's a terrible, terrible thing. It was awful experience.
Sure.
How can anyone transform through psychosis?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's both. It's what you describe. It can be a terrible, awful experience, but also, you know, many people, I mean, not necessarily everybody, but many people can describe this as something that's been illuminating as well. And I truly believe that, I mean, our thinking minds don't have all the answers. You know, logic doesn't tell us everything, you know. And so if you break through the rational, you can perhaps connect with deeper levels of reality. And that doesn't mean that it's a prescribed, you know, kind of multidimensional thing that people can tell us about. We don't understand it, and we probably never will. But when you break through in that way, then you can probably connect more deeply to these dimensions of reality that we don't really understand and know. And of course, many cultures throughout history have known this and have revered people who've had breakdowns like this. So therefore, I think that it is possible for some people, you know, not for everybody necessarily, but for some people, to be able to retain and grow through that process, and really sort of develop a connection to kind of just sort of deeper levels of our being that we're not always aware of. And I couldn't put it any more specific than that, but I really do believe that there's something that people can tap into when they have these experiences. But you know, that doesn't mean it's also not awful and terrible. And of course, people will need all sorts of support during that as well, at different times as well.
Yeah, well, it makes sense to me because for me, you know, once my ego disintegrates, then what part of me remains if I'm not this ego and a good? All of this buried stuff comes up to the surface. So I've had stuff that happened in my childhood that I don't remember. The person that's talking to you now does not remember it. But when I was in that psychotic state, I remembered it and I knew it and I told my mum about it. So releasing that secret from my system and bringing it out into the open and seeing how that's affected my life and how I've learned to behave to deal with that trauma gives me new possibilities and new choices in my life, because I can see that how I'm behaving is a choice now, because I see I'll have impulses to do this or that because of this thing that happened to me when I was little, and I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't had that psychotic episode all those years ago. So yeah, it can open up useful material to look at. But I think how would open dialogue work with it? You know, if someone's in that altered state and has got stuff coming up like that, how might open dialogue support that in a way that medicating, just putting someone on board and medicating them doesn't?
Sure. I mean, just to say that you talked about your ego disintegrating, and I think that's very much what happens, isn't it? And I remember one of the first things I saw when I was a student, well, junior doctor, is people with psychosis for whom English wasn't their first language. Well, actually, English was their most common language. They spoke in a different language when they were children, right? And they got into education. They were speaking that original language again only. Right? So they completely gone to that space, and they didn't even remember that they didn't know they remembered it in the way they did. So I saw exactly that, and people's kind of ego does disintegrate in many ways, but because of that, it kind of it does link you to, as you say, sort of your own history and things deep in your past, and that's why I've described it as it's the difference in meditation. We're trying to do the same thing often. In kind of psychological and spiritual practices, we're also trying to go so deep down into our past, into our archaeology, if you like, and an experience like this can also do the same thing, but it traumatically, it kind of happens by force, and suddenly, and so that can lead to some really bewildering times, and so it can be scary and disorientating as well. And in open dialogue, what we try to do is enable people to make sense of it themselves in whichever way works for them. So the key priority in open dialogue is to make a space that generally allows all voices to be heard, and that might be all voices within the same person, right? They might have very conflicting views and thoughts on what's going on here, and the people around them might. When that happens, it's most likely, and I've seen it time and time again, it's most likely that what they receive is validation. Because there's a great study by a friend of mine, who I think you might know him, Charlie Harriet Maitland, who's an excellent chap, yeah. And he, he did a fantastic study, so I often quote, he doesn't know how often I quote actually, but in which he looked at people who'd had psychosis or similar type of experiences who ended up in services their whole lives, and those who didn't. And he found the main difference between the two is that in the latter category, those who didn't end up in services were surrounded by people who validated their experience and didn't make it sound completely ridiculous or pathologized it or these kind of stuff. I'm like, I can kind of understand where this comes from, or in this context this makes sense. So you try to create an open space where all these voices can be heard, and you want to invite people who are important to them, so loved ones and others, networks, friends, colleagues, so that together they can start to knit together their own understanding, and through that often comes validation, and that validation then leads to some ability to integrate with all of these things rather than just sort of push it away. Now, sometimes you might want to push it away because it's just too much, and you can't do that. And we can't insist everybody needs to start opening up and connecting all that. Sometimes not possible. So in those instances, medication, hospitalization, all those things come into play. However, we want to create spaces so wherever it's possible, we want to try and enable people to grow through it, understand it, form a narrative which is not ours to make, and hopefully find their way through it. And of course, that's the promise of open dialogue. I'm seeing that anecdotally, but that's what we hope to prove with the evidence, that in the end, it leads to less people getting stuck in the system and having relapse after relapse and hospitalization after hospitalization, but actually getting on with their lives, integrating it and moving on.
Well, I've not had the benefit of open dialogue, but writing my book felt like a validating process. Actually, this morning, as I felt so empowered that I was defining my story. This is my story. And I felt like no psychiatrist can decide anything for me. This is it. And so that kind of did what open dialogue could have done. But
that's exactly right. I mean, we want to help people write their stories, and that's what you've done. You've had to go through a lot of effort to write it all out in that way, in a fantastic way that you've done. But that's exactly the same outcome, to try to achieve some meaning, some understanding, some connections. And you've done it phenomenally in your book. I just wanted to, as you know, I was a big fan since I started reading it. And you mentioned a little bit about my experience of it, but you maybe underplayed it a little bit, because I do quite a lot of people coming to me with books that and usually, I mean, not everybody's, it's not an easy thing to write in the kind of prose that's going to attract people's attention to the end of a whole book, right? It's quite a commitment you're asking for people. So I thought it was another one of the kind of books I'm used to reading, but by the end of the second page, I was completely hooked, and I turned the TV off. I just kept on reading, because the way you wrote it, just the opening, was immediately grasping. I mean, I'm surprised you didn't get a bigger publisher. However, Aeon, you ended up with a publisher that's sort of decent, with a good pedigree and a good background and some good exposure. So, I am sure that anybody with remotest interest, I mean, this will go beyond, beyond the sort of people who are interested in this area anyway, just because of your prose. The way you wrote it, it really reels people in. And the experience I had, if you remember, I told you after I finished reading it, was that I started missing your story after I've ended the book. And that only happens after the best books, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You miss the author after the best books you've read. And it only happens with a small proportion of books I read. So absolutely, I knew this is definitely something that people will love to read.
Thanks, Russell. That's a really good compliment, a good sales pitch. I'll pay you later.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on board, Russell. That's really good to have you here. And I'll let you get back to your daughter.
Yeah. Well, good luck. And like I say, it's nobody who buys this book will regret it. I'm absolutely sure about that. And I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud of you. I'm so thrilled that this is so therapeutic for you. Whatever happens with the book, this is wonderful that you've done this for yourself. Whatever else happens, but I'm sure other things will happen. But well done. Great stuff.
And I wish you all the best with the open dialogue research and that onward journey. That is really just a big hope for us all.
Yeah, fingers crossed for all this.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And now for my next excerpt is taken from my second episode, where my parents have insisted I stay at home because they want to take care of me and they don't want to see me in hospital. And that is a big challenge to take care of someone in psychosis. So this second extract comes from a scene in the second episode. Every night, Mum and I go through the same routine. She brings me the antipsychotic medication and gets worked up to make sure I take it. To her, it's a simple chemical problem with a simple chemical solution. Too much dopamine. Antipsychotics prevent the uptake of dopamine in the brain's receptors. Voila, all fixed. Having completed the first year of a nursing course twice and worked for years as a GP receptionist, she holds much faith in our medical system. To me, it's a chemical lobotomy. Here, take this, she says, holding out 2 tablets in the palm of her hand. Every night I go through the same questions. What are they? They're pills to make you better. But what are they? A blue pill and a white pill. This is like the Matrix. But what do? They make you better. Better than what? They make you well. Please take them. I don't want to take them. Please. She sounds desperate. How will they make me well? I don't know. Just take them. You believe these will make me better. Yes. So would you just please take them? She sounds quite frustrated, like she gets when a toddler won't do as they're told. So I take them. For her. Mum has read all about brain chemical imbalances, serotonin and dopamine theories, which have become popular knowledge since I first learned about them in my psychology degree 10 years ago. What isn't yet common knowledge, though, is the work of award-winning medical journalist Robert Whittaker and his book Mad in America, published in 2002. Robert was horrified to learn that a person's chances of recovery from psychosis is much higher in developing countries like India or Nigeria than so-called developed countries like the US or UK. When he looked into it, he found that in spite of over 100 years of research and many billions spent, there was still no clear evidence that schizophrenia and other related psychotic disorders were the result of a diseased brain. He uncovered shocking historical documents that outlined how the public was sold a lie in order to sell more drugs. The drug companies had invented a story about a brain chemical imbalance to explain why antipsychotic medication worked. In fact, clozapine, the first antipsychotic developed in the 1950s, had only been shown to sedate patients, making them less bothered by their symptoms. Psychiatrists at the time never reported cures, just that patients were easier to manage. The pharmaceutical industry has been running quite a racket and paying psychiatrists to write articles for journals on the miracle cure of antipsychotics, and Robert Whittaker's book exposes this. For me, the drugs add another layer to the altered state I'm already struggling to deal with. I turn the light out and pull the covers over me, the medication making its way into my system. A blood-red, hot liquid snake swallows my feet, inching its way up my legs to my waist. There are holes at the tips of my toes, and something is draining out of me, taking with it all tension. My groin is being pulled downwards as the snake has me in its mouth. My mouth joins in. Silvery saliva pools on my tongue, which I press to the roof of my palate. It spills into my throat, so I swallow. My eyes fill with a salty sting, blood-like. I've become the snake. And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, a world premiere of my Beautiful Psychosis book trailer. It's, what can I say about it? It was inspired by a 1980s song. I mean, I love the way Gary Jules reworked Mad World from Tears for Fears from the 80s, but that was a cover. I mean, that was an original, so I didn't have the copyright for that. So I needed to find a new song to use. And I commissioned the beautifully talented bow huntress to do a version of this 80s track. Originally, I was going to have a dancer, and she was going to have a golden ribbon coming out of her navel, because that's a scene in the book. This golden ribbon of light appeared from my dantienne, and I danced with it. And so that was going to be the scene, that scene from the book, kind of put into the trailer. But because of lockdown, I've not been able to do that. So I've had to kind of find Creative Commons stuff on YouTube. For anyone who doesn't know, Creative Commons means anyone can use the footage. Okay, let's share the screen.
Thank you for coming home. Sorry that the chairs are all worn. I left them here.
I had my first psychotic episode when I was 27. I was working at the BBC Natural History Unit in Bristol. When I discovered the guy I was seeing was sleeping with someone else, I smoked a whole bag of weed to myself, vowing afterwards to give up forever. Without the cannabis, insomnia kicked in. After 5 nights without sleep, I ended up in A&E.
They're drawing up an injection for the rapid trank.
Go, always believe in your soul.
3 questions determined whether I was sane or not. 3 questions stood between me and the psychiatric ward. I got them wrong.
'Cause you're gold. I'm glad that you're bound to return. There's something I could have learned. You're indestructible. Always believe in.
But what if the questions are wrong?
After the rush is gone, I hope you find a little more time. Remember, we were partners in crime.
This is proof, look, evidence. I haven't even published it on YouTube yet. So here we go. I'm going to click publish. Well, first of all, I'm going to copy that link. I'm going to click publish. And now the world can see. Okay, I'm not going to share it right now. But there we go. I was going to ask you to say in the comments, can anybody tell what the song is? But I can see that there are 71 comments there, and there's no way I'm going to get through them all. Can you see them? If people say, do they know what the song is and who sang it? I'm talking to my friend across the room. No? Okay. So, sorry, I'm going to spoil it for you. If you're dying to know, or you're dying to tell me that you know. It is Gold by Spandau Ballet. And I don't know if you know anything about like 80s bands and names and stuff, but I didn't know until my 30s that Dexy's Midnight Runners, remember, come on Eileen. Dexy is not a person. Dexy is Dexedrine, it's a drug. And Dexy's Midnight Runners, I don't know if you remember that scene in Trainspotting where that guy shits the bed. That is Dexy's Midnight Runners. So it made me think, I wonder what Spandau Ballet means. So I looked it up, and it's horrific, actually. Spandau Ballet is one of 2 things. Either Spandau Prison, which is a prisoner of war camp, Nazi prisoner of war camp in Germany. Spandau Ballet is what happened when the prisoners were hung. They called it the Spandau Ballet. And the other possible reason they're called Spandau Ballet is also just as horrible and involves Nazi Germany as well. machine guns from World War II and World War One were nicknamed Spandau by the British soldiers because they were made and manufactured in the same town as Spandau Prison, Spandau. So it had their plate on the machine gun, it said Spandau. So the Spandau Ballet was if you were not shot down by machine guns down enemy lines. So anyway, that's horrific. I'm not sure why I'm telling you that story. But I just want to, it's gold, and it's because of the golden ribbon that came out of my belly button. I will do that dance version for my audiobook trailer, fingers crossed. In the meantime, share the trailer far and wide. And we've come to the parts where I want to tell you about the giveaways. Now, I was hoping to only be an hour and finish at 3, but I've overrun. I'm really sorry about that. If you leave, obviously I won't even know. But I've got 3 ebooks to give away and 2 audiobooks to give away. Now, how to qualify? What I want you to do is shout about it on social media. So share the trailer, or share my website where people can buy the book, or post a selfie of yourself reading the book, whatever you like. You can share it Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, share, and make sure you tag me. Now, that's the important thing. You have to tag me, otherwise I won't know that you've put the post out there. And every single tag, every single post, I will put that person's name into the hat. So if you enter 10 times, your name will go in 10 times. So you could potentially enter the trailer, the website, and a selfie, and do that 4 times on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. So that's potentially 12 times your name can go into the hat. You've got a month to do that. I will do a draw on the 1st of November and announce the winners of the ebook. Now, if you want to win an audiobook, the person who does the most posts, so the most tags, the most names in the hat, gets an audiobook. And the person with the best selfie with my book also gets an audiobook. So it just remains for me to say, please go ahead and buy the book. Please buy it through my website because, okay, I'm going to admit to you now, I have got affiliate links, so I get a little bit more. If you buy it on those links, instead of going straight to Amazon, if you buy it through my website, I get a tiny little bit more. And if once you've read the book, it would be really good if you could write a little review on Amazon. That will help me a lot. It's the algorithms love reviews. And I'm trying to become an Amazon bestseller. So a review will help, and all these shares will help as well. And it's entirely possible because all I have to do is sell 6 books a day to beat the number 10 book. And the number 10 book is Girl Interrupted, which was made into a film with Angelina Jolie. So I think I can sell 6 books a day. So don't all buy it today, stagger it out a little bit over a few weeks. If by the end of October, all of our hard work with sharing the posts, I could be an Amazon bestseller, which is not for my ego. It's so that other people who were looking for other things, they will see the orange sticker, they see it's in the bestseller list, it social proofs it. And the more sales that I get on Amazon, the more likely Waterstones are to pick it up because they've said no, they're not interested in it. But if you get some traction on Amazon, you take that to Waterstones and then they may take the book. I'm not going to tell you how much it is because it's actually quite expensive. It's not the price that I would have given it, but I've negotiated it down as much as possible. And the publisher is a very small publisher, and they've printed 2,000 copies, and they've got much smaller economies of scale than the likes of Hay House and Penguin and whatever. So yes, I'm sorry about that, but if you can't afford it, just try and win it. Try and win your copy. And if you can't be bothered with all of that, I am offering a discount. I'm not offering everyone a discount because I'll explain in a minute. 20% discount on people really in financial difficulties. All you have to do is email me and I will send you a discount coupon. Now you then use this discount coupon on the publisher's website, because this website has come from the publisher, because they've said, okay, this is as low as we can go, but here, have a discount for your followers. Now, I'm sorry, I'm not passing this out to everybody. The reason is, if you go through the publisher, it won't count as an Amazon sale, so it won't count towards my bestsellers. So if you want to help me become a bestseller, then don't get a 20% discount. But if you want the 20% discount, just email me. No questions asked. You don't have to explain a sob story. Okay, so I am popping this champagne to celebrate myself on this momentous occasion of now being a published author, don't you know? Everybody's dream. Everybody's got a book in them. Not everybody gets it out of them. So, woo! I am awesome. You're all awesome. If you read it, you'll feel awesome for days. As Russell said, he couldn't put it down when he lived in it. I love that, when you live in a book afterwards. So anyway, now I'm heading off to a launch party. So I'm toasting myself now, but join me at a launch party afterwards. Raise a glass with me, and I'm going to chinky chinky ching it on you and say, I hope my book, which I don't have a copy of, as you see, because it's not arrived in the post, may my book touch hearts, open minds, and feed souls. Cha-ching! Actually, it's not bad. It's quite nice, this Shandong. Could quite get used to it. Yes, I'm going to a launch party, which is... Ooh, let me just get you the link. Catherine Lucas is having a big party for World Mental Health Day. I've been invited to share my book and have a party. There'll be dancing, there'll be a funky earring competition. So please come along and join me, because it's in Zoom, and then I can see you because I can't see anybody. We can have little breakout chats and stuff like that. So come along to the launch party. Finally, I want to say a big thank you to my assistant, Laura, who, when she heard that I had a book deal, she came out to celebrate with me and said she would help me with the launch, because I had absolutely no idea, this mountain ahead of me. What am I going to do? Do I have to go back to England? What do I do? She said she would help me, and I really couldn't have done it without her, because 6 weeks ago, it wasn't a mountain at all, it was a cliff, and she just kind of very gently pushed me off the cliff. She said, oh, you should make a video, a pitch elevator. So that was how I got inspired to make the elevator pitch that hopefully you all saw way back when. So thank you very much. Laura gets the only signed copy in existence, because as soon as those books arrive, I'm going to sign one of them. There's 5 of them. One will go to Laura, one's for me, and then I've only got 3 left. She will also get an ebook, and she will get an audiobook. So I was going to pop her on, but she's blacked out a camera, so there's no point doing that. I don't think she wants to be seen. But thank you, Laura. You've been amazing. I really couldn't have done it without you. You've made it really, really enjoyable. So thank you, everybody, for all of your comments. Thank you for watching. You've been amazing. I've been amazing. We're all amazing. Join me at the party. Go buy the book and spread the book far and wide. Let's make it a roaring success. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye, wherever you are in the world. If it's afternoon, evening, nighttime, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.